So, today we're going to read The Boy Who Loved Words. This book was written by Roni, Schotter and Giselle Potter. Reading in a British accent to make it more exciting. There are in this world people who are born collectors. Some collect shells or stones, others feathers. Some have even been known to collect tiny teaspoons. Such a one was Sleg. He was a collector of words. Sleg loved everything about words, the sound of them in his ears, the taste of them on his tongue, the thought of them when they percolated in his brain, and almost especially the feel of them when they moved in his heart. Whenever Sleg heard a word he liked, he'd shout it out, jot it down on a slip of paper, then stuff it into his pocket to save. Such a collector. Sleg pockets positively brimmed with words. He stuffed new ones into his shirt, down his socks, up his sleeves, and under his hat. Look how excited he is. I love it. While other children busied themselves with bats, nets, and all manners of balls, Sleg stayed on the outskirts, always on the periphery, listening, collecting delicious words. His father, a practical man who sold sturdy shoes for a living, wondered what good could possibly come from a son with such a strange predilection. His mother, a large, lovely woman from the old country, worried. Could her beautiful boy find happiness? Waving her arms in the air, she was a windmill of worry. As time went on, people began to call Selig by a new name. Wordsworth. Hey, Wordsworth, kids would giggle. Here's a word for your collection. Oddball. Oddball, Slig repeated. The silly-sounding word should have made him giggle, but instead it made him lonely. All because he liked big words. Ones that I cannot pronounce, apparently. Sorry, guys. One night, Selig had a dream. Alone, in front of an unusual emporium, he encountered an oversized amphora. Curious, Selig gave it a tap. Swoosh! Out popped a swarthy, swirly man. Djinn! Selig exclaimed. Then, genie, he shouted. Everything the tang of tasty new words. What you want? Said Genie. The genie asked. A wish? Such strange and savory words, such an offer. At a loss of words, Selig suddenly knew his wish. It was for an answer. Is it true? Am I really an oddball? Oddball? You are a Vorvish, a lover of words. Already you have that people search for their whole life for. An enthusiasm, a passion. What you need now is a purpose, a mission. Then, without a word of warning, the genie disappeared. Selig awakened from his dream. Lickety-split, he packed a rucksack with a pillow and blanket, apples, honey, cream soda, and his entire collection of words. He knew exactly what he had to do. Selig took to the road, determined to find his purpose. On the trail of his purpose, Selig's senses sharpened. He noted the nod and the toddle of tulips in the wind, the sway and the swagger of tree branches, how at evening the light dimmed to announce the arrival of twilight and stars. Dusk, Selig noted, added that short and enhancing word to his collection. But in time, Selig's step grew heavy. Under the weight of so many words, it was harder and harder to move. He was shuffling and shambling when he might have been rambling and ambling. Perhaps what he needed to do was lighten his load. But how? Throw words anywhere? Waste them? Oh, impossible. They were far too precious. Selig was too tired to think. His exhausted brain could imagine but one thing: slumber, a splendid word. Sadly, he was too sleepy to write it down. In front of Selig stood a large and lovely tree. He removed his jacket, stuffed like his mamma's strudel with words. Tenderly, he hung each word on its own separate branch, as if putting it in bed for the night. With a sip of cream soda and a nibble of honeyed apple, Selig clambered, then curled in a crook of the tree. Snug, he thought, and fell directly to sleep. Comfortably cradled there, he dreamed of his mamma, his mission, and macaroons, his favorite cookie. During the night, a pacing poet, unable to sleep for want of a word, found himself under the same tree, gazing hopelessly at the moon. Night after night, he'd been struggling to find the right words to describe it. Suddenly, mysteriously, a swirling wind blew up. 4 of Selig's words sailed off the branches. Reaching skyward, the distracted poet caught them. Discarding the word macaroon, he held tightly to lozenge, lemon, and licorice. The moon, he wrote in his notebook, growing more and more excited about each word, melted like a lemon lozenge in the licorice sky. My stars, the poet shouted, exuberant. I gotta look that one up. That's it! The following morning, Selig woke to what could only be called a rhapsody of birds and words. The poet was reading the newest poem aloud, a poem. Chock-a-block was Selig's word. Wiping the sleep crumbs from his eyes, Selig scrambled down the tree and saluted the poet. Your poem, he told him, contains some of my favorite words. How beautifully you use them. Why, thank you. For once the words just seemed to come to me. Upon my word. How lucky I am. What, may I ask, is your name? I should like to dedicate my poem to you. For a moment Selig hesitated. Then suddenly, for the first time ever, he proudly proclaimed, They call me Wordsworth. It was then that Selig realized his mission. It was spreading the word, sharing his words with others. From that day forth, Selig's steps were light and filled with purpose. Ever the collector, he added new words as it pleased him. But now, whenever he left word heavy, he discovered the ideal places to sprinkle, disperse, and broadcast them. In that way, a baker whose pastries had always been ignored found his shop filled with a mob of hungry customers. When the baker's back was turned, Selig on a macaroon break had tossed some of his favorite words into the air. Crispy and crumbly landed next to the crumpets. Scrumptious fell against a loaf of pumpernickel. Lucius leaned against a layer cake. Oh, that's luscious, sorry. Upon my word, how lucky I am, the baker exclaimed when he turned back and saw his voracious new customers. Oh, gotta show you a picture. Dun-dun-dun. Obviously, I need to expand on my vocabulary. Neighbors realized they were bickering when the words fuzz, hubbub, and jibber-jabber raised down on them and stopped the fighting. Selig watched them grow still and gazed kindly upon one another after he cast hush, harmony, and chum in their direction. And so, by word of mouth, the legend began. It's Wordsworth, people would whisper. Then suddenly the right word occurred to them. He is near. They would nod knowingly. Upon my word, how lucky we are.
Could you report to the office? Mr. S, report to the office, please.
Years passed. Selig was a man now, only a myth. But while he delighted in his work, he found that once again he was lonely. Solo. He sighed. One day, after launching the words limber, spry, and gusto towards an aging, unhappy man, Selig heard a sound on the breeze. A single, pulsing, marvelous note floated through the air and found its way straight into the heart. Mellifluous. Maybe, he exclaimed. Pursuing that perfect note, Selig found a young woman seated by a lake, playing a lute. Suddenly his heart was aflutter. Tremulously, he asked, may I have a word with you? What is your name? They call me Melody, the woman sang out. The music of her voice, combined with the charm of her words, was to Selig the sweetest of all songs. It was love at first sight. Together they journeyed back to Selig's hometown to his mother and father. What a reunion! How his mother smiled when she saw them. Word that they looked thin. She cooked Selig's favorite food: brisket, dumplings, plum crumble, strudel, and of course macaroons. To comfort the tired feet, Selig's father cobbled the couple into sturdiest shoes. His sturdiest shoes, excuse me. Rested and restored, Selig resumed his life's work, joyfully gathering and scattering words in the wind. Since then, word by word, legions of lucky people have discovered and delighted in them. You too may find yourself lucky if, one day, while you are thinking or writing or simply speaking, the perfect word just seems to come to you. If so, you'll know that Selig is near, and on special days, if you feel like humming or suddenly bursting into song, you'll know that Melody is with him. Upon my word, you may say, how lucky I am. The end. And then, of course, there's a glossary to help Mrs. Z pronounce all the words.